that Lal Bagh was once a battlefield? Or that Whitefield was an area kept aside for beekeeping?
I can keep it in my...
Find out about these interesting nuggets about our city based on tales and stories that have been told and artifacts that have been left behind. May I please welcome Miss Meera Iyer from Intac, a history and city enthusiast, to speak about the little-known aspects of Bangalore's history.
I have to say the previous one is a hard act to follow, so please don't expect any of that from me. Thank you for having me over to speak about Bangalore's history and some lesser-known aspects from its history. So let me start with a question. Supposing I'll give you 3 cities, Chennai, Hyderabad, and Bangalore. Which do you think is the oldest? Everybody says Bangalore. I hear some Hyderabad, Chennai, Hyderabad, Bangalore. Okay, so definitely the kids have it right. It is in fact Bangalore, which is older than these other cities that I mentioned, which comes as a surprise to many people. Because many people think Bangalore is a city with no history. It's a new city, it's an IT city. But I'm here to show you that that's not quite true, okay? So, I'll start with one of my favorite bits of literature. This is Asterix. Asterix fans, anybody? Asterix and Obelix, yeah, this is from Asterix and the Golden Sickle. And if you focus on the panel on the top right, they're looking for a dolmen. What is a dolmen? Any of you seen a dolmen? Good guess, no? This is a dolmen, right? In the previous picture, you see they're actually sitting under a dolmen. So did you know that there are actually dolmens even in Bangalore, right? So this one is in Savandurga. This is in Bannerghetta. And if you had come to Bangalore about 200 years ago, you would have actually seen structures like this in the heart of the city, in Lal Bagh. So what is a dolmen? A dolmen is basically, it's a structure built in memory of somebody who passed away. So it's a memorial, right? And these were built sometime between 2,000 and 3,000 years ago. So that means there have been people living around here for at least that long, actually much longer. So Obelix, what's he carrying? A menhir. Have you guys seen a menhir? No? Anybody seen a menhir? These are on the way to Devanahalli. You guys go to the airport at Devanahalli, take a small detour here and there, you will see these structures, right? So, and these are massive, bigger than what is shown in the cartoon with Obelix. These can be like 10 feet, 12 feet, 15 feet high. And what are they for? Again, quite mysterious, because mostly it looks like they were erected in memory of a hero, somebody who died in battle. But it also seems like sometimes you'll have like 4 or 5 menhirs in a row. And then it seems like they're pointing on a particular day towards sunrise, on a particular day towards sunset. So it's it's not exactly known why all these were erected or what the meanings were for people who erected them 2,000 years ago. But these are also still there in many places around the city. Okay, I'll fast forward from 2,000 years, we'll come down to about the 9th century. And the stone with that dirty cloth on it is really, really important for the history of the city, because that's the first time we hear the name Bengaluru mentioned anywhere, right? So just as an aside, this is what it looks like now. If you go, this is in a place called Begur, not far from Electronic City, in a temple called the Panchalingeshwara temple. And the stone with the arrow, this most unremarkable, very plain, there's no pictures on it, nothing. But it's super important for the city because it's the first time it talks about a battle. It says it took place in Bengaluru. So we know that there's been a place called Bengaluru for at least 1,100 years. But let's fast forward. Everybody's heard of Kempegowda? Yeah, Kempegowda Airport, Kempegowda Institute of Medical Sciences, whatever. With good reason, Kempegowda is all over the city because he's considered to be the founder of the city. This is the city that Kempegowda founded. It's a fortified city, was a fortified city, and planned with a kind of gridiron layout of streets. it doesn't exist anymore, right? The fort is gone, the moat is gone. This is the Google Earth map, which I think is quite cool. So in that square at the bottom is KR Market. It used to be a lake earlier, now it's a market. And the road that's going straight up is Avenue Road. On top you have State Bank of Mysore. So when you're walking along those streets in that area, those are streets that were laid out 500 years ago, right? Okay. A little more in time, 1600s, we get another fort in the city. Wow. And 1700s, we have Tipu and Hyder. And then the British come, they kill off Tipu. And then we get a new part of a city, the cantonment, right? And now the city has grown and grown and grown. So I stay somewhere down there off the map. I think we are somewhere there, like way off the map. So the city has really grown. So that's the history of the city in 5 slides. But let's look at a few things about the city which are kind of forgotten. So I will share some things about buildings, because I really like buildings, some forgotten stories about events, some about people, and some about places, very quickly. Okay, so let's look at this building. So some children from Neve, if there are any here, have probably been to this building. You have? Sorry? Grade 1, yes, grade 1, grade 2, probably grade 4 also, I don't remember. So we do take children out to this place. Any of the adults been here? Can you recognize it? Can you recognize where this is from? Have you been there? Adults? Parents? You have? Okay. It's Tipu Sultan's fort near City Palace. Okay? Yeah, so it says there, Tipu Sultan's palace. This is very close to City Market. And this is one of the paintings that's there in that palace. And I really like this because of the stories it tells. See, like the thing about buildings, you look at them, and if you look closely, there are things about it which tell you stories, which tell you about links that place has with some person long gone, some place far away. So this is one such example. If you look closely at this painting, this is on a wall, okay? The entire wall, the entire room is covered with this painting. You can see flower vases, yes? Okay, very common motif, you see it kind of all around the country. But do you see the bows, do you see the ribbons? Can you make out? Do you have a pointer? No, chalega. Okay. So do you see the ribbons? Very, very unusual motif because so the ribbons are interesting because they're actually a French motif. So this is what I meant when I said it's a touch of France in Bangalore. How did this happen here? Because Tipu sent his ambassadors to France. They spent a few months there, and when they came back with gifts from Louis I think it was 16th. And among the gifts that the king gave Tipu, there were carpets with these exact same ribbon motifs. And so that has been incorporated into the palace, right? So you have a small little bit of France which is there in the heart of the city of Bangalore. Okay, you can, everyone's seen this building, right? Mayo Hall on MG Road. We all drive past it waiting for the signal. So take a look at it closer next time. Architecture, it's very typical of that period. So this is built in the cantonment part of the city. So built by the British. And so when the British were building buildings in this part of the country, in our city, they were basically importing the same style that was there in England. They would do the same thing here, right? So very typical of 1800s England here in Bangalore, meaning that the architecture is like harking back to what was in Greece and Rome. So like those things, those designs above the window, the same thing as what you'll find in Greece. But take a slightly closer look. One of these motifs, this is called the Greek key or the Greek meander. Again, a Greek motif. The top one is from Mayo Hall. The bottom one is actually from the Parthenon in Greece. And you'll see the same motif, right? So for me, I find this very interesting that we have here in Bangalore a motif which actually has such a long history. It's there all over Greece, Rome, everywhere. But not many places in Bangalore have this. So what does it mean? It's, the design is something that, because it's kind of never-ending, It implies infinite, endless, but also implies holding hands like this. So a lot of symbolism in this. Okay, one last building. So now that we've just lost, the Queen of England just passed away, right? This is a building not far from MG Road, Cunningham Road, just off Cunningham Road. Anyone seen this? Ali Asgar Road. Huh? You went past it? Okay. So if you look on top at that emblem, there's a lion and there's a unicorn. And the other place that you will see this is in Buckingham Palace, because this is the royal coat of arms. So what was this doing in Bangalore? Because it was the emblem of what was called the Mysore Residency. That is, the British government in Bangalore had the same emblem as what it was in the UK. So there are very, very few buildings that still have that left on them. The building in Cunningham Road is one of them. Okay, so, sorry, what? The tiger is wearing a crown. The tiger represents the United Kingdom, and the unicorn, did you see the unicorn on the right? That represents Scotland. Yeah? Okay. So, staying in the same region of Cunningham Road, MG Road, and keeping in mind we're now in the 75th year of independence, you all remember the first war, not remember, but you know of the first war of independence? When? Yeah. Sorry, what? The revolt of 1857, yeah. So when I was in school, it was called the Sepoy Mutiny, and that happened in 1857, right? Before 1857, there were also other mutinies that happened, the first being in 1806 in Vellore. But in Bangalore also, we had a couple of mutinies, or at least attempted mutinies. The first was in Nandi Hills. It didn't work. The plot fell through. The second was in Bangalore. And if you read accounts of the time, they call it the Bangalore conspiracy. So what happened was, like, they had this grand plan. The main person behind the mutiny was somebody called Tipu, no relation to Tipu Sultan. So his plan was, they were going to overthrow the British, kill all the officers, not the ladies, not the children, take over the city, and then the mutiny would spread to the rest of the country, right? This was a basic plan. It didn't happen. So the idea was that they would first give a signal in the fort, and then when they heard the signal there, the soldiers in the cantonment would overthrow their British officers. It didn't happen. Any idea why? Why do you think? Any ideas why the plot fell through? Let's have someone else. Somebody? Just guess. Yeah. Okay. He says there was a mutiny in the mutiny. Yes, there was. So there was a traitor, right? Something that we see all through Indian history. There was a traitor. He went to his English bosses and said, there's this thing happening. So what happened was all the mutineers were caught, and 4 of them were actually blown away by cannon. This is what happened to them. This is a picture from 1857, but the same thing happened in Bangalore. 4 of them were tied to cannons and blown away, right? And this happened, where? The next time you're walking on MG Road, there's a park next to it. That's where this happened, in the parade ground. And there were lots of people who witnessed this whole thing. And there's one eyewitness account which says that when the main mutineer, Syed Tipu, when his body was blown, his head came off and it fell and it was still smiling. That's the story. Okay, let's look at, this guy, the Duke of Wellington. What's he famous for? Huh? The Duke of Wellington, anybody know what he's famous for? Huh? What? Defeating Tipu Sultan. He's more famous for actually defeating Napoleon. But yes, you're right, he actually was in Bangalore he was part of the army that was actually fighting Tipu. But what's interesting about him also is that after Tipu was killed, he was brought in to look after, to establish the garrison, which was in Srirangapatna. So the British went to Srirangapatna, and it was hot and full of mosquitoes, and they were miserable, and they said, we want to go somewhere else. And Wellesley said, no, 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 Srirangapatna is the best. People said, what about Bangalore? And Wellesley says, no, 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 there's no water, there's no grass, there's no grain, we'll stay here. So finally, after he left, as soon as he left, they said, chalo, now we'll move. And so they came to Bangalore. And so that's how Bangalore became IT city, not Srirangapatna. But here's another guy who had a very different opinion of Bangalore. This is a house on the corner of Cunningham Road and Palace Road. It's called Knighttone. Any guesses what it means? What does Knighttone mean? It's not the name of a place. It's not the name of any person. Why did they name this house Knighttone? Any chemists here? Anybody from IISc? There's an IISc connection to this? No? Okay. You'll have heard of the noble gases in school? Anybody heard of noble gases in school? Okay. So this guy, William Ramsay, he's the one who found the noble gases, right? He found argon, helium, neon, krypton, xenon, and he isolated radon. So radon is a radioactive noble gas, which actually is emanated from, it comes from radium. And initially, they were calling this emanation from radium. And then Ramsay said, let's not call it that, it's so difficult to say it, let's call it Knighttone, right? So that house that I showed you is named after radon. Why? Because William Ramsay was actually brought to Bangalore to advise the government on where to set up the Indian Institute of Science. So at that time, the Tatas had already put in a lot of money. They were willing to invest. The Mysore government said, here, here, come, come, come. But there were other places who were saying, no, no, we'll get the Indian Institute of Science. We don't want to go to Bangalore. So William Ramsay came, and he went all over the country, and he said, Bangalore is the best. It's got the best climate. It's got all the electricity you want from Shivasamudram. It's got all the resources you would want. Let's have it here. So that's how it came up here. Okay, Harry Potter fans? Yeah, me too, me too. Okay, so there's a small little connection between Harry Potter and Frasertown. How does it go? So I was walking around Moore Road in Frasertown, and I was wondering about who that person is. Turns out he was an officer of the government in the cantonment. His daughter was Joan Mary, her daughter was Jennifer, and Jennifer's son was Ralph Fiennes, I don't know how you pronounce it, who played Voldemort. So the next time you walk around Frasertown, there's a small little connection to Bangalore in Harry Potter as well. Actually, there are lots of connections to the city, so many places. I just picked my favorite. Okay, last ones. In the little description of my talk, it says I'm going to speak about beekeeping, so I'll speak about beekeeping. So this is about Whitefield. So Whitefield actually was established by this guy called David White, and he had this really utopian idea of what Whitefield should be like. He wanted to set up this completely self-sustaining community because he believed that Europeans could be farmers as well. So based on this idea, he went and asked the Maharaja for 3,900 acres, and the Maharaja said, take it. And he set up this whole community. He set up this plan for a community that would work on agriculture, that would work on beekeeping, that would be rearing sheep, they'd be making mats, they'd be growing coffee, they'd be growing vanilla, etc., etc. This was his plan for Whitefield. Did it actually turn out like that? Not quite, right? Not quite. But the next time you go to Whitefield, just keep in mind, they were supposed to be doing beekeeping, not really computer science or whatever else. Yeah. You live in Whitefield, yeah. So the guy who started it wants you to do beekeeping. Okay. Last story. One of the things I like about Bangalore is how we've retained our rural bits within the city. So this is in Malleshwaram. It's a Dhobyghat, the largest Dhobyghat in Bangalore. There are hundreds of people, hundreds of washermen who still work here. And many, many people actually still send their clothes to this place to be washed. What's interesting about it is that, so this I picked because it's interesting to see how places have changed or what their original purpose was, right? So in this case, that little pond there was actually the public swimming pool of Malleshwaram. And that was established sometime in the 30s, if I'm not mistaken. And it used to be called the swimming pool extension. There was a whole area there. It's still called the swimming pool extension, but the pool itself has become part of the Dhobyghats, right? Okay, so that's my, my talk. Thank you. Any questions, anybody? If you have time, yeah. Okay. So the question was, how do I gather all these? I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of talking to people. I do a lot of reading. I spend a lot of time poring over archives and reading letters people wrote to each other like hundreds of years ago. So that's what I do. Thank you.